Have you ever questioned why you can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up feeling drained? Why some dreams feel more vivid than reality? Or why ancient cultures revered the night as a sacred realm? It's because sleep isn't what you've been led to believe. Mainstream narratives tell you that sleep is purely for physical recovery, that it's just your brain's way of hitting reset, but beneath that surface explanation lies one of the most concealed truths of human existence. A secret quietly ignored by science, dismissed by religion, and overlooked by media. For centuries, hidden mystical writings and hushed scientific discoveries have hinted at one startling truth. Sleep isn't rest, it's relocation. And once you realize where your consciousness travels each night, everything you thought you knew about life begins to unravel. You can choose to look away now and rejoin the illusion, or you can keep listening and understand why the moment your eyes close, something far more profound begins. You've been misled about what happens when you fall asleep. You've been taught that sleep is simply for physical healing, for dreaming, for organizing memories. That's the official version, packaged by institutions that prefer you not dig too deep. But if you've ever found yourself in a dream so immersive it felt like a different world, if you've awakened with memories that don't belong to this timeline, or sensed an unseen presence watching over you as you slept, then something inside you already suspects the truth. Sleep isn't about shutting down, it's about shifting. Every night, like clockwork, your awareness detaches from this plane and ventures elsewhere. And the reason it's rarely discussed? Because if you truly understood what takes place, if you could recall where you went, who you encountered, and what you're capable of beyond the body, your view of this life would never be the same. When you fall asleep, your physical shell stays behind, but you don't. The core of your consciousness slips through unseen thresholds. You leave behind the noise of identity, the weight of limitation. You enter realms beyond the grasp of modern instruments, yet described in precise detail by ancient wisdom. The Egyptians chronicled it, the Vedas mapped it, shamans traversed it, and deep within, so do you. But you've been programmed to forget, taught to believe dreams are meaningless, static, that sleep is nothing more than neurons misfiring. But ask yourself, why do some dreams hit you with such clarity they steer the course of your life? Why do others feel more vivid than anything you experience during the day? Why do you sometimes wake up with a deep knowing that you've just returned from somewhere else? Because you have. Sleep isn't the day's conclusion, it's the threshold of return. As your eyes shut, your soul begins to travel. Where it journeys depends on who you are, what you hold true, and how awake you've become. For some, it's chaos, flickers, symbols, distortion. But for others, those who know how to see, it's a gateway into vast dimensions, parallel timelines, and silent dialogue with nonverbal guides. The ancients didn't see sleep as passive. They approached it as sacred. Egyptian initiates underwent years of dream training. They believed sleep was a nightly descent into the underworld, not to suffer, but to transform. In the Vedic tradition, the state of Sushupti was where the self dissolved into the absolute, the closest one could get to the divine without crossing the veil entirely. Shamans spoke of dreamwalking, entering alternate worlds to heal, receive visions, or confront hidden forces shaping the waking world. But in the modern world, all of that has been dismissed. reduced to REM cycles and neurotransmitters, stripped of soul. And that's no accident, because a society that remembers where it goes at night becomes impossible to control. You can't govern those who know they are multidimensional. You can't dominate a being who travels galaxies while their body lies in stillness. So they distract you with pills, screens, noise. They dull the organ that opens the gate and label your inner visions as psychosis. They ignore children who remember past lives. They ridicule the lucid dreamers. They call them strange, delusional. But they're not. They're just waking up. The pineal gland, that tiny pine cone-shaped center tucked in your brain, is not a leftover evolutionary artifact. It's a receiver, a portal. The ancients etched its image into sacred stone, placed it atop scepters, and honored it in sacred rites because they understood. This was the key, the link between the tangible and the ethereal. When activated, it doesn't just regulate melatonin, it dissolves the illusion of linear time, opens frequency channels, and allows your spirit to attune to realms others sleep through. That's why certain dreams feel like divine instructions, because they are. Why you dream of places you've never been, yet somehow know, because you've been there before. And why, on rare nights, you become aware within the dream. Because that's the moment your soul starts to remember. And once you remember, nothing is the same. You no longer see sleep as an escape, but as an expansion, a continuation that stretches far beyond form. You begin to prepare before rest. You clear your room. You set an intention. You whisper, "Tonight I remember. Tonight I explore." And slowly, things begin to shift. The static fades. The signal sharpens. Dreams become clearer, more coherent. You don't fall asleep, you launch. But it goes even deeper, because you're not just journeying elsewhere. A different version of you begins to surface, one that's always been there, silently guiding. When you sleep, the ego loosens, the mind opens, and in that stillness your higher self steps through. Not a myth, not a symbol, a very real facet of your being, conscious and aware, operating beyond this timeline. It doesn't use words, it speaks in signs, sequences, energetic recognition. It reveals truths your waking mind can't reach. And sometimes it appears in a dream, looks directly at you, and delivers the message you've long avoided. When that moment happens, when the message lands, it doesn't just touch your thoughts. It moves through your DNA. It's like a dormant truth reactivating, a remembrance that can't be rationalized, only felt. You may wake up breathless, tears in your eyes, not from fear, but because you've touched something real, something eternal, something that reminds you you were never really asleep. You were returning home. Most people never reach this space, not because they're incapable, but because they're cut off. Their pineal glands, once radiant beacons to the stars, have been dimmed, poisoned with chemicals, buried under distraction, weighed down by unhealed wounds. These things don't just damage the body, they obstruct the soul's path. They distort the transmission. They jam the signal. And that's not accidental, because if you remembered every night who you are and where you've been, you wouldn't play small in the daylight. But the path back is still open. You can remember. You can restore the bridge. It starts with awareness. with cleansing not just your body, but your inner beliefs. It starts with asking the unspoken question, what if sleep is the most important part of my day? What if it's when my true purpose unfolds? Because it is. In sleep, you don't just process events, you explore timelines, alternate futures, soul contracts. You step beyond chronology and enter a field where possibilities are tested, lessons are integrated, and sometimes you leap. You witness futures, you visit alternate selves, you encounter love that opens you wide or terror that reveals what still binds you. And through it all, a part of you watches, grows, evolves. Your body stays put, you don't, because you are not your body. You never were, and sleep proves it. On certain nights, you may become lucid, aware that you're dreaming, and suddenly the entire dream bends to your will. This isn't a glitch, it's a crack in the simulation, a sign that you're becoming conscious even in altered states. And when you learn to stabilize that awareness, you gain access to something extraordinary, the power to create. Not just observe, not drift passively, but build, shape, design. You conjure temples, landscapes, wisdom codes. You become the architect of the dream. And in doing so, remember that you're the architect of your waking life, too. But it goes even further. Lucidity is just the first doorway. Beneath it lies the astral, a realm where thought instantly becomes form, where you're no longer bound by your earth story, where you can meet non-human intelligences, enter cosmic archives, or receive energy upgrades so precise they shift your waking vibration. You come back different, calmer, clearer. You make decisions with ease, not from thought, but from deep knowing, downloaded directly from your higher planes. And then you feel it. Maybe this, the waking world, isn't the real one. Maybe life, as we know it, is just one frequency band of a vast, infinite field. Maybe the beings in your dreams are more real than those you pass on the street. And maybe, just maybe, you've been sleepwalking through your waking hours and only truly alive when your eyes are closed. That realization terrifies some, but for others, it's liberation. Because once you know consciousness exists beyond the body, the whole game changes. Death loses its grip. Fear loses its power. You stop clinging to illusions that were never yours. And sleep becomes sacred again, a portal, a nightly reunion with your origin. Yet no one teaches you this. Schools ignore it. Doctors overlook it. They tell you to get enough sleep, but never explain why it matters so much. They never mention how indigenous tribes use dreams to guide decisions, how breakthroughs, inventions, and visions came from sleep, how your subconscious isn't a garbage bin, it's a gateway. Worse, they pathologize your experience. They label dream visitations as sleep paralysis. They call your astral moments hallucinations. They prescribe medication to block them, therapy to explain them away. But deep down, you know better. You felt the presence, the floating sensation, the whisper that rang true, though you can't explain how. You weren't broken. You were crossing realms. And now, it's time to cross consciously. You no longer need to be unconscious to travel. You don't have to wait for night. The veil between dreaming and waking is thinner than ever. The more aware you become, the more that veil dissolves. Waking dreams emerge, inner visions surface, and you realize you're still transferring, only now with eyes wide open. This is the awakening they fear most. A dreamer who remembers, a sovereign soul who no longer needs the system, one who can self-heal, self-guide, and traverse infinite realities with ease. Because when you can do that, you are no longer controllable, no longer afraid, no longer asleep. And that is what makes you powerful. So the next time your head meets the pillow, don't say you're going to sleep. Say you're about to journey. Say you're stepping into remembrance. Say you're returning to the place where truth has never been lost. Let your eyes close, not to drift away, but to wake up deeper. Because though your body rests, you have destinations waiting. You've heard the phrase, sleep on it, like some magical clarity arrives by dawn. But have you ever asked why that works? It's not your brain doing the heavy lifting, it's you. A part of you, beyond form, beyond thought, went ahead, traced timelines, saw what could be, and whispered the answer back through the veil. That insight you woke with, that hunch, that certainty, it didn't come from dreams. It came from the version of you that never closes its eyes. Because awareness doesn't power down. It shifts bandwidths. It travels strata of perception. And when your conscious mind finally releases its grip, the rest of you is free to wander the inner cosmos most never dare to touch in waking life. But here's the thing, you don't always remember. You're not supposed to, unless you're ready, and most aren't. They slide into sleep under the glow of devices, minds spinning with worries, bodies tensed from the day. Their last thought is a fear, a ping, a craving. They don't enter sleep, they crash into it. No sacred pause, no presence, no intent. Then they wonder why they rise feeling heavy, haunted, unmoored, why their dreams are chaotic, why their soul feels out of reach, because they treated a holy threshold like a habit. But you don't have to. You can approach sleep like the rite it truly is. You can prepare as the mystics once did, not with dogma, but with conscious devotion. Clear your space, diminish the static, light a candle, drink living water, and plant your intention like a seed in fertile ground. Tonight, I open. Tonight, I remember. Tonight, I walk with awareness. When you do, the unseen world leans in, the gates part, the sentinels nod, and something shifts. You stop dreaming and start experiencing. You might find yourself in halls of wisdom, brushing fingers over books etched in glowing glyphs. You might wander luminous temples, guided by beings who speak in resonance instead of words. You might stand before oceans of time, staring into futures not yet formed. These are not fantasies. They are soul memories, forgotten realities, and true sleep is your access point. But the passage isn't always gentle. Sometimes, before the light, you must move through the static, the clutter, the echoes unresolved. These show up as nightmares, as loops, as symbols wrapped in fear. But they aren't punishments. They are fragments of you, asking to be held, Old wounds, orphan stories, splintered aspects surfacing in metaphor. And when you meet them, not with dread, but with presence, they transmute. The monster becomes a message. The pursuit becomes a pattern. The fall becomes your liftoff. This is shadow work in the astral domain. And once you learn the terrain, the healing unfolds in ways no earthbound therapy could reach. Because in that dimension, there's no mask, no performance, just essence, untamed and radiant. You face what's unhealed. You embrace what's unlived. And every time you surrender to that process, without forcing or fleeing, something clears, something realigns. You don't just wake up lighter, you wake up truer. And here's what they won't teach in school. The waking world shifts because you shifted in the unseen one. Your choices feel different. The people who show up reflect new frequencies. Synchronicities increase. Numbers, signs, déjà vu. Because your physical life begins syncing with your soul's rhythm. The ancients knew this, that dreams weren't just rest, they were realignment, nightly recalibration. And when you honor that, the very guidance you've been searching for by day starts arriving through the night. But it doesn't stop there, because not every dream is yours alone. Some are shared. You can meet others there, not just symbols or ancestors, but living souls. People your heart recognizes long before your mind catches up. Have you ever seen a stranger in a dream? Then months later, met them in waking life and felt that electric familiarity? That's not accident. That's preparation. That's soul-level rendezvous, made possible in the dream space. And you can receive wisdom, real applicable knowledge. Artists, scientists, creators have long credited their greatest insights to dreams. Einstein, Tesla, they didn't just invent, they remembered. They tapped into the great reservoir of cosmic mind during altered states. Because in sleep, you're not bound by logic or words. You're plugged into Source. And Source speaks in light, in symbols, in sensation. When you learn to listen, you stop seeking teachers. You become your own. This truth has been buried. Because if humanity remembered its capacity to travel between realms, to commune with the soul's intelligence, to rewire timelines through intention, then the systems built on fear, control, and separation would unravel. You wouldn't chase validation. You wouldn't wait for permission. You wouldn't fear death. Because you would know, deep in your marrow, that you are more than this form, that you've been here before, that you'll be here again. And every night, you return to something vaster than any story you've been told. So next time someone says, sleep matters, smile, because you know what they don't. You know the encoded truth. Sleep isn't rest, it's return. It's a shift in reality, a nightly exodus from illusion back into the realm that remembers you. And the more conscious you become, the more the veil dissolves, the more those two realities begin to meet, until one day they no longer feel separate at all. And that's where true transformation begins. When the membrane between dreaming and waking thins, you finally hear what's always been whispered in dreams and symbols. This isn't illusion. This isn't simulation. It's projection. A dense field where your consciousness comes to practice, to shape, to recall its origin. And when you close your eyes each night, you slip back into the truth that existed before your name, before your story, before the world told you who to be. There's a reason the deepest love, the heaviest grief, the highest flight you felt came through dreams. These aren't just emotions, They are memory, traces of other lifetimes, glimpses of the original self, the one that lives beyond time. And each night, when you let go of identity and release the physical, you return to that essence. Even if your conscious mind forgets by morning, your soul does not. And that's why you change, not in loud ways, but in the quiet ones. The way you perceive light, the way you feel truth, the way you sense what's unseen. Because your awareness is stretching, expanding, reweaving itself through the greater tapestry. You start touching the field, feeling the pulse beneath the world, reading the patterns between moments, between people, between timelines, and something else unfolds. The fear of the dark, the real dark, dissolves. Not just the dark in rooms, but the unknown within, the shadows you used to avoid, because you've walked them. You've seen what's beyond. That nightmare that once gripped you, now you recognize it for what it is. A mirror, a map, a coded invitation. And when you stop running, when you stand your ground, it shifts, it softens, it vanishes. And there behind it, you meet the part of yourself that's been waiting. This is the deeper work, not escaping life, but embodying what you reclaim in the dream space, carrying it back, merging it here. Because you were never meant to live fragmented, to dream in one world and suffer in another. You are meant to unify them, to walk as a bridge between planes, clear, conscious, whole, and that's what shakes the foundation of control. A human who remembers who they are, because someone like that doesn't conform. They don't just repeat, they radiate. They redirect reality through frequency alone. And if enough of us do that, the illusion can't hold. Ask yourself, why don't we learn about dreams in school? Why are ancient teachings on astral travel dismissed? Why is the pineal gland, your inner receiver, dismissed or silenced with toxins? Because this isn't about science. It's about suppression. Like, they don't want you remembering. They don't want you navigating other dimensions, meeting the guides, the ancestors, the soul family waiting for you in the ether. They don't want you to realize this version of reality is only one sliver of your being. Because once you taste that expansiveness, once, you can't go back. Sure, not every dream is profound. Some are static, debris from the day. That's why how you enter sleep matters. That's why your frequency at the threshold matters. Go to bed in agitation, and you might dip into the lower realms. But enter with calm, with sacred intent, and you rise. You reach clarity, connection, insight. And the more you practice this, the more you become a conscious participant, the clearer it all becomes. You stop waking in fog. You rise with purpose, with vision, with answers to questions your waking mind never asked. This is the path of the conscious traveler, not just a dreamer, but a soul navigator. You were never meant to sleep passively. You were born to explore, to receive, to transmit. You are light wrapped in matter, capable of moving through all dimensions. If you choose to remember, and if these words resonate, you're already remembering. Your soul led you here. Because You're ready to part the veil, to recall what was never truly lost. You are not just a body that sometimes dreams. You are an eternal essence, temporarily visiting this form. And every night, you go home. That's not accident. That's preparation, a remembrance, written before you were born. Because in the realm of dreams, nothing is random. Everything is encoded. Encounters, symbols, whispers, all part of your soul's curriculum. And now, you're beginning to remember, not just where you go at night, but who you are beyond this waking script. You're not here to sleep through life. You're here to wake through sleep. To reclaim the maps etched into your being. To walk both worlds with eyes wide open. So tonight, when the world goes dim and silence wraps around you, don't just fall asleep. Step through. Remember your name beyond names, and return not with dreams, but with truth.